Je vais vous poser une question.
I'm going to ask you a question.
Juste un instant, vous pourrez
And just for a
rester à
while,
cette question
just stay
pour
with
voir,
that question,
pour voir.
just to see, just to have a look.
Sans passer par aucun des 5 sens,
Without going through any of your 5
sans
senses,
passer par aucune sensation énergétique,
without going
sans
through
passer par
any
la pensée,
energetic sensations or any
êtes-vous?
thoughts, where are you?
sans passer par aucun des 5 sens,
Without going through any of your senses,
sans passer par aucune sensation énergétique,
without going through any energetic senses or sensations,
et sans passer par aucune pensée,
without
où êtes-vous?
going through sentences, where are you? Nowhere.
Ne cherchez pas une réponse forcément,
Don't
simplement
seek
voyez,
an answer. Just simply see.
voyez.
Just see.
Voyez ce qui demeure,
See what
ce qui
remains
vient aussi.
or what
Peut-être qu'il y a
appears,
quelque chose qui vient.
emerges. Maybe there's something that is coming, emerging.
Comment c'est vécu?
How is it lived?
Si on ne passe plus par les sensations physiques, énergétiques,
If we don't
ni
go
par les
through
pensées,
the
comment
sensations
c'est
or
vécu, ce qui reste.
thoughts, how is it lived? What's left? How is it lived?
Donc pour ceux qui veulent,
For
vous pouvez,
for
ouvrir
those
les yeux,
who want to, you can open your eyes,
et ceux qui veulent
and
peuvent
those who want to can
dire ce qu'ils ressentent ou ce qui, enfin,
tell us
forcément,
what they feel, or
s'il y a une remarque,
precisely if
s'il y a
there's
une
something to
question.
say or question that is
Oui.
arising. I can't really answer without a thought.
Ah bah on est obligé d'utiliser une pensée
Oh,
pour
we have to
parler,
use
ça, c'est
thought to be able to talk.
clair. Ok, là il y a une pensée qui va s'exprimer.
That's obvious, yeah. There's a
Ouais.
thought expressing
Non,
itself
mais
right now. Yeah, of course.
on a fini l'exercice.
The exercise is finished, so
L'exercice pointe vers l'absolu, donc effectivement tu vas pas pouvoir
this
penser.
practice
Mais là, on
points toward the
redescend d'un
absolute,
cran,
so you
ok,
won't
déjà,
be able to
quand je
think
rouvre les yeux,
then, but
forcément
right
que
now
on redescend d'un cran.
you open your eyes and
Donc,
of course you're back into the relative.
Maintenant, qu'est-ce qu'il y a?
So right now, what is there?
Voilà.
Well, what comes to me is what is
Et
everywhere.
il y a eu nulle part tout à l'heure, partout, nulle part.
And there
Le
was
verre à moitié vide,
someone
le
saying
verre à moitié
nowhere, and now it's everywhere. So what comes to me is the heart.
Plusieurs,
Yes, there are
sens dans le
several
cœur.
senses or meanings to the word
Le
heart.
cœur, dans le
For
sens dont l'emploient les sages, c'est
sages,
vraiment
the heart is
le centre de tout ce
really
qui est,
the
de tout ce
center
qui est,
of
le centre même.
all that is, the core center.
La première vidéo que j'ai faite, je l'ai
The
appelée au
first
cœur de la présence.
video I made, I called it the heart of presence.
Donc c'est pas à un endroit précis,
It's not somewhere in particular
c'est vraiment
place,
l'essence même.
but it is the very essence. The heart is the essence of things.
Les mots qui viennent en prononçant des mots, c'est calme,
Words are coming up, calm.
tout ça est là. Et au moment où j'ouvre les yeux, il y a une pensée qui
I
vient. qui est,
open my eyes,
pourquoi
and
foutre tout
words
ça là-dedans?
coming up is like, why would I put all of that?
On va pas le dire, c'est
Why would I
important.
add
Il y a
all
tellement
of
de
that
spontanéité
into this?
dans ce rien, qui est
Ouais.
tout en même temps,
there's so much stillness and tranquility in this nothingness.
Pourquoi on rajoute autant de trucs, quoi? Alors,
And
c'est
I open
tellement
my eyes, and why do I add on so many things, since it's empty in the end?
Je ne le
It's,
partage pas juste pour partager, hein,
Ouais, ouais.
parce que je sais que c'est ma problématique aujourd'hui. Hein,
I know that it is my problematic today.
ça,
Why all of this
dedans, quoi, tu vois. C'est
in
tellement
this
beau, quoi.
beingness?
Ouais.
It is so beautiful when you're staying with this emptiness.
Parce
Why
que,
would you add
là,
anything?
en fait, ce qui se passe,
Because
c'est que tu
what
te mets à
happens
travailler à
is
la
you
surface
get
des
caught up
choses et
by caught up by the
ce rien
surface of manifestation.
reconnaît que
This emptiness,
c'est de ça que la
this
création est
nothing,
tissée,
recognizes
de
that
ce rien.
all this manifestation is
manifestation-là,
woven in
Elle est faite de ce
emptiness.
rien.
It
Et à
is made
partir
of
du
this
moment où
nothingness.
Enfin, ce n'est pas un regard personnel, mais le regard
And this
va prendre sa vraie place.
looking,
C'est-à-dire
which
que
is
ça va
not a
plus être un
personal
regard
one,
avec filtre,
is
où tu vas interpréter ce que tu vois.
taking back
Ça
its
va être le
natural
regard sans filtre,
place
réel.
without
Donc,
any
c'est comme
filters.
c'est.
It's just looking at things the way they are
Si je le prends de
naturally
manière purement
and
scientifique,
how they really are. But if I
si
take it
j'interprète tout
on
le
a
temps ce que je vois, effectivement, c'est lourd.
scientific
C'est pesant.
manner, if I look
Mais
at
si je vois
things,
de manière même purement scientifique,
if
ce
I look
qui
at
est,
things
il y a que des
and
taches de couleur,
interpreting them, it's quite heavy.
tu
But
vois.
if I look at things
Il y a
in a
souvent des choses,
scientific way, it's just
je
movements
parle au
and
niveau physique, tu vois,
colors and
il y a
shapes.
que des fréquences et les fréquences ne
Purely
font
physically,
pas de mal
it's
en soi.
only
Il y
frequencies
a pas de problème.
vibrating,
Je peux
so it's not
partager
hurting
ce que
anyone.
tu dis, et tu me dis si
Ouais,
ça
vas-y.
correspond. Ce n'est pas qu'il y a rien et ça qui apparaît.
Tell me if I'm wrong, but it's not that there's nothing and something is appearing inside. It's this
Le
is
rien
nothing.
est le fondement du tout.
Yes, nothingness is the very foundation
Ça,
of
c'est hyper-
the whole.
L'interprétation de ce que je vois est quelque chose alors que
It is just an interpretation.
la lumière qui se projette sur un écran,
Same with this idea of a screen and a movie and the light going through the
Oui,
film.
exactement.
but it is
En
only
fait,
the
c'est
light
pour-
that
c'est
makes
rien,
it
c'est pour employer
appear.
un mot mental, hein, mais
We use the word
parce que le
nothing, but
mental
it's
dit c'est
just
rien,
a
c'est
way,
vide d'objet.
just
On est ok avec
for
ça,
lack
ça,
of a
c'est
better
tout à fait
word.
vrai, c'est vide d'objet, mais c'est pas rien parce que c'est la conscience.
Consciousness is empty of any objects, but it is not nothing. It is
Majuscule, si tu veux, tu vois ça.
consciousness. So it is a nothing with a capital N.
Pour prendre une image pour bien m'imprégner.
Ouais.
C'est comme si je regardais un écran de cinéma
As if
sans
I
image,
was
en disant,
watching
oh,
a
c'est beau.
movie
Et au
without
moment où
any
il y a
movies
une
going
image de
on,
fleur qui
being
apparaît,
projected.
je
And I
vais
tell myself this is
chercher à
beautiful.
rajouter une fleur. Alors,
And all of a sudden, flower was projected onto the screen, and then, oh, someone added actually a
là, il est noir autour,
flower on the screen.
au milieu, mais il n'y a pas de fleur en fait. C'est
But the
toujours
truth is, there's no,
la lumière dessus, quoi.
it's still the screen with
Blanc, c'est ça qui est important de comprendre,
with a
parce que
flower added
c'est
on.
ça,
Yes,
l'identification
the screen is
simple, c'est
always
quand on pense que
blank,
l'écran de cinéma
always
prend la
white.
couleur des images du film.
This is where we
Mais jamais,
get
heureusement pour vous d'ailleurs, parce que il serait tenté, on verrait
mistaken.
très bien.
Is the screen always
Si à chaque fois
stays
ça prenait
white?
l'attente de toutes les images, t'imagines le film il ressemblerait à rien au bout d'un moment. Donc
The screen
non, c'est
doesn't
toujours
change itself to and doesn't become the colors that and the
c'est ça la
shapes that
beauté.
are
Et c'est
projected
ça
onto
l'amour
it.
aussi.
Mais c'est ça,
And it
je me
is
rends compte que
beauty.
je
It
sépare,
is
pour
love.
moi, le
Oui.
rien,
This
c'est
is love.
l'amour, et dedans vient rajouter un truc.
Ah
Alors
ouais,
que ce
non.
truc qui se rajoute, c'est l'amour aussi.
Oui. L'amour, c'est même la reconnaissance.
Love is the
que ce que
recognition
t'appelles ce rien,
that
mais
what
c'est
you
pas péjoratif
call
quand on le dit, on est d'accord,
this
hein.
nothing, but
Parce
it's
que
not
pour toi, ça a l'air
pejorative.
d'être, voilà. Ce rien,
This
en fait,
nothingness
ce rien qui s'exprime
that is expressing
sous toute
itself
forme.
and
Ça,
in
c'est-
every forms,
c'est
as
vraiment
every
un-
forms.
C'est ça l'unité. Et
This
c'est ça,
is
l'amour, c'est vraiment
unity.
la reconnaissance de ça.
And love is the recognition
Ce
of that,
rien que
this
qui est
nothingness
déguisé là derrière
that
ta-
is in
cette forme
disguise behind
physique.
this physical
Ce
form.
corps-ci, c'est le
This
même.
body is the same.
Il est vécu pareil pour tout le
It,
monde.
it is lived the same way for
Cette
by
là, tout le
everyone
monde
in this room.
vit exactement
Everyone is living the
la même
very
chose,
same
sauf
thing,
que il y a une
except
teinte
that
ajoutée
there's
du
a
fait de l'identification.
color that is added on
Et la
because of
conscience n'est pas
identification,
différente.
but
Et c'est pareil,
consciousness is
pour
still
les
the same. Same with
Et c'est
plants
pareil pour les pierres, les-
and
on le dit à chaque
rocks,
fois, mais
and we keep repeating that, but all objects are the same.
ce qui fait dire à Jeff Foster au moment où
What
il réalise
makes
le soi,
Jeff Foster say
j'ai vu
when
une
he
chaise et j'ai
realizes
compris que
himself,
c'était là.
I saw a chair and I understood that everything was here. I saw that everything was
C'est
here.
ça.
That's it.
Oui, non.
Yes? No?
Une
Question about sensation of I am. I am, or consciousness being conscious of itself. It feels like a sensation, but it's more subtle than all the five senses. But is there something else behind it prior to that, observing the sensation? Yes. There is a taste to I am, but it's not connected to senses. It's not an energetic feeling. Even though as soon as we get into this feeling of I am, because we identify less to all the five senses, it feels like it's more calm. So we kind of identify that to this calm. This very joy of being is very calm. But the joy of being is still not entirely beingness. It is a result. Often this pattern is there's this I am, and then there's the ultimate I, but it's not personal I. It's what we call presence. There is presence, but it's not a presence of something. Not even presence of this sensation or this perception. It is entirely stripped from anything that we could add. This essential I, it is this essential I that is at the very base of anything and everything that appears, from the more subtlest, the most subtle to the most physical and dense. So again, Krishna defines consciousness, defines quote unquote, as more subtle than the subtle. More subtle than the subtle.
Et donc le chemin, d'une manière très classique, c'est
so the way, path,
la vague,
quite classical one, is I am me. I feel like a wave.
Je me sens comme la vague.
I feel like the wave.
Je goûte l'eau.
I taste water within the wave, so I feel
cette vie.
This life. I feel a life.
Formelle, sans forme, sans truc comme ça.
Formless.
Et la dernière étape, c'est je.
And the last stage is I,
en fait, je suis la vie.
Which means I am life. And therefore the ocean. I recognize myself as the ocean. It is also the classical path for someone who's meditating. When we start meditation, we try and feel peace. That's the first step. And then we feel immersed into this peace. That's the second step. All of you might have felt that there's no contours to your body, to yourself. If we don't identify to the five senses, we are immersed in this peace. And that is the taste of I am. And the last stage is to recognize that I am this peace. I am peace. I'm not immersed into, I am peace. It is a bit of an affirmation. It feels like a very... A great meditator came to Ramana. You keep saying that. You keep saying that we're all realized, and he's not the only one. Every sage say that, and he says, "Yeah, that's it. You are already realized, entirely, fully realized." But I don't believe that. And I don't believe that. Well, Ramana says, that's your problem. That is our only problem. And I was the same. Same to me. For me, I didn't believe it at first. We wrote the book one. There is only one. I asked Gerald, how do I realize the self? And he says, you just accept it. That's not enough for the mind. To the mind, it's not enough. But that's the truth. We accept that.
On accepte qu'il y a être et que
that there is
je suis être.
Beingness, and I am beingness. We accept that, and I'm not the rest of it. Well, afterwards, yes, you realize that you are everything, but you realize that you're not something in particular. You are.
Parce que dès qu'on redescend un petit peu plus au plan relatif,
if we go a little bit,
si je vous dis où êtes-vous?
If we dial down a bit, if I ask you who or where are you, all of you will say, I'm somewhere around there. And that's just because our sense of vision takes 80% of our attention. We focalize on this sense of vision. So I see this image and I come back. And so there must be someone somewhere there that sees, who sees. It is a deduction, really, because we're just identified to the image that we see, but the truth is, no. A friend of mine who's blind, and we were talking about meditation, and I told her that she's on the spiritual path herself, and I asked her what is already and always there, whatever is appearing on the screen of your mind. What is always there, whether you have an image of the world coming to your eyes or the blackness behind your eyelids. And how do you perceive that? I don't perceive black. I don't perceive black when my eyes are closed. And so the mind tries to conceptualize that. So, okay, so she doesn't perceive the world, she doesn't perceive black, and it's not really conceivable when we are identified to the sense of vision. It's not white either, just so you know. I've tried. It's So what does she perceive then? She can't describe it. The only thing she said is, same for you when you tell yourself, when I tell myself, I want to feel how it feels in my pinky, and that's the same for me. I just go there and experience it. What makes me re-identify is the pain, the relationship to pain in the body. This is what really keeps dragging me back into this body. I can't really welcome this suffering. There's something in me that doesn't want to suffer, that really can't stand the idea of suffering. And it's very, very present in me, this resistance. This character is hypochondriac, so how to... I know it's going to come from the heart, but still, it's a problem for me. It's a physical pain, suffering. Do you know? Can you localize it? Oh, it's about all physical suffering. So you don't feel it right now. No, not right now. So it's coming from the mind. Okay, that's clear. So it has nothing to do with the body. All is good. Okay.
Oui, forcément. Donc, il y a une projection dans la
There's a projection in temporality there.
Pour que ça soit aussi viscéral, c'est certainement
For it to be so visceral, it has to be emotional. And it has to be linked to something that happened in your story where you felt insecure. This event is what needs to be welcomed. It's not the symptoms from this event. Hypochondriac is just being hypochondriac is just the result of it. You have to resolve the root of it, the base of it. You're not gonna deroot or if you keep trimming the top of a tree, you're not going to be able to take the tree away. It can go back to childhood sometimes. When you think about this event, do you see the event connected to it? I know that I was fairly insecure during all my childhood, but when exactly, I don't know. When you think about one of these events that made you feel insecure, unsafe, is there something that is arising in your body? Yes, sadness. Have you been have you actually gone in contact with this sadness? Well, as best as I could. I don't know if I really got all the way through, but I did my best. Sadness is a friction between the impulse that comes from deep within, this impulse to free yourself, this impulse for enlightenment. So it is ready to actually move on, turn the page, and a current that is grabbing onto a story. So that's exactly it. I feel like it keeps catching me up.
Des fois, c'est pas avec le mental que ça peut être résolu.
You can't resolve it through the mind.
Il n'y a pas beaucoup de pouvoir.
The mind doesn't have much power. We give such an importance to the mind, but it doesn't have much power really, unless you believe it. But the body is absolutely harmonious with nature, and it is capable of transcending many things. But if you don't authorize yourself, allow yourself to fall, sometimes people come to me and say, I feel like I'm on the edge, and if I fall, what's going to happen to me? And Gerald keeps saying, well, just jump.
Mais ça déclenche toujours quelque chose.
It always there's something happening in that moment when I say that. Every time. Jump, and you'll see that. You'll realize that there are no. It might appear as a fall, but you'll never be impacted. Sometimes it feels like we're going to be overwhelmed by this sadness, but it's not possible. But at the moment where you jump and you feel like it becomes quite important, you can actually help yourself so that you make it a little more comfortable. You can come back to who sees, who perceives, and realize that you are the space within which this fall appears. This is how it is going to be welcomed, and I'm insisting on that. Because I hear people say, I welcome. You can't do anything. It is welcomed. You're not the one doing it. It is welcomed on its own, by itself. And sometimes what happens is we block ourselves because it's, and I keep repeating people, it's okay if you cry. It's sometimes people even scream. And it's all right. It can happen. It can express itself like that. It can. It's not a problem. But the body knows how to reach equilibrium on itself. It's called homeostasis on the emotional level, but not only, also the physical level. When people tell me when I meditate, I can feel such energy showering me with so many energies. Must be an archangel that is actually bombarding me with energy. But no, that's not it. It's just that you are less, you identify less to those congestion and contraction that you, and those block all the canals in your body that are called nadis in India, and those are energetic channels. And if you're not identified to that, then the energy starts moving around again, and it harmoniously comes back to equilibrium on its own. But we have to accept, we have to surrender to this fall, to this falling. You said something about enlightenment becoming more and more common. There's a lot happening in the world right now. It's pushing us to confront ourselves with all our contractions, energetic contractions, and clean. And no need to go on the energetic level to see that it is, we are being shaken. Just on a physical level, we can see. There are so many people that are shaken by so many things at the moment in life. Maybe I thought maybe humanity was reaching a new plan of consciousness. Another plan of consciousness, it reveals itself. At the moment, it might sound strange, but I've heard a lot of sages say that, and it is actually quite logical. Suffering is pretty intense at the moment on the manifested level, so it pushes people to enlighten and to, well, to... If we saw humanity as one being, humanity is suffering, same as actually human being suffering. Humanity is trying to escape suffering, to realize the self. So it's pushing, yes, for that. There's a lot of suffering, so it's shaking things, but there's also a lot of amazing things happening at the moment. Lots of things that are taken as absolute values that are being shaken up. Small example. Prana, for instance, there's more and more people exploring prana. It is, like says Gerald, it's an epiphenomenon or education. We think it is quite anchored, in our mind often that we have to have someone who knows, a knower and a student, but it's being shook up quite hard at the moment. There are now education systems that are very, very different. It's not even a system as, it's not even called education because we don't consider the child as someone who doesn't know. So that's, even that, just that is very new. Same with how we look at animals, how we look at agriculture. It's changed quite a lot in the last few years. Permaculture can be a path to enlightenment. Everything can be, really. But to observe that nature does perfect circles can help you realize that maybe everything is perfect. all the separations that are dropping away, dropping down. Yes, this is what's happening. Yeah. The way we look at healing, also the way we take care of our body. Yeah, it goes quite far now. Therapeutic approaches. But when we are enlightened, we realize that there's nothing to heal. Then why would you happen so it doesn't? Because when we run behind, new technique to heal, but we actually entertain this illness, then why? Why? Well, we just occupy ourselves. And it's true. It's actually true. There's a story. It's a sage say that to a friend of mine. A yogi who lives on the edge of the Himalayas, and he had disciples, pushing a big stone on the beach. And my friend asked, "Why are they doing that?" And the sages say, "They just keep busy waiting for enlightenment." It's purposeless, but anyway. But once we've realized the self, we can still push stones to play, to have fun, this or something else, no problem. But we're not attached to it anymore. We're not identified to it anymore. We keep on pushing the rock, but there's no one pushing the rock anymore. There's no one pushing the rock anymore. Well, the rock is illusion, so. That's really it, really. It's. Don't tell yourself that nothing or everything is purposeless, so I'm going to stay home, do nothing. It's not going to work either way, because I've tried it. As long as I'm not enlightened, I'm staying in my room, I don't eat, I don't drink. And at some point, I felt what Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita. So I'm pressing against the forces of nature to put them into motion. Consciousness pushes against forces of nature to put them in action. Duty on relative level, duty on the human being level. We act, even what appears as a non-action is actually an action. Even when you see Ramana, who stayed on his sofa answering questions, it was still an action. There's always action. Even himself was saying, I'm not doing nothing. Every day at 3 a.m. I cut vegetables for people. He was following the impulse of the heart. But also, people who've stayed home and did nothing, or just stayed home, realized the self. They must have done it through the impulse of the heart. I did it myself as a rebellion, as being a rebel. So that's why it didn't work for me. I just said to myself, this is purposeless, meaningless. All actions are meaningless. That's what yogis say. So if it's meaningless, then might as well not do them. I'm not just going to do nothing. But we can't do nothing, really. how can we discern then properly from the heart wanting and something coming from the mind?
En fait, tout est parfait comme c'est. Donc, là, cette
Everything is
expérience-là était aussi
perfect
parfaite, elle faisait aussi
as it
partie
is. So this experience was part of the path.
Au niveau absolu, c'était
On the
vraiment
absolute
comme ça que
level,
ça devait vivre, quoi.
it had
Après,
to be lived this way and experienced this way.
Tu sais que tu es en accord avec toi-même quand,
You know when you are true to yourself, when innerly you don't feel any closure, contraction.
Souvent, c'est le doute qui est difficile pour l'histoire du petit moi.
Doubt
Pour le personnage, le doute envers l'avenir.
is often difficult.
Donc,
It's doubt towards
quand on ne sait
future.
pas quel choix prendre,
So when we
pour le
don't
même choix, mais,
know
pour un peu,
what choice to make, even though we don't
sentir
make any
cet élan,
choice, but to feel this
je
impulse,
dis simplement aux gens de voir
I
ce
tell
qui est-
people
ce qui est
just
vécu ici. Pas
to
dans la
look
tête,
at
mais ce qui
what
est
is
vécu.
being
Pour ça,
lived in the
il
heart.
suffit de
And for
te voir
that,
dans la
you
situation.
just
Si
need
jamais il y a un
to
doute, tu te vois dans la situation et tu vois ce
visualize
que tu ressens.
yourself
Qu'est-ce
into
qui est
this
vécu dans le corps?
situation.
Qu'est-ce que
What
te
is
dit le corps? Parce
lived
que le corps est
in
vraiment
the
la
body?
vie.
Because
Il
the
te
body
raconte pas
is
de
really life. It's not
mensonges, d'histoires.
telling you stories or lies. So if it's vibrating or
Ouais.
throbbing in the body,
Oui.
you know that it is true then. Yes.
C'est que c'est... Voilà, c'est par là.
Yeah, that's the right direction. Yeah.
Le baromètre, voilà. Le baromètre, la
It's a
boussole.
compass.
Ouais.
It's the perfect compass. But at the same
Non.
time, we can't
En même temps,
make
toute
any
expérience
mistake.
est-
No,
est parfaite,
every
c'est juste,
experience is perfect. It's
cette
just that
boussole-là, sur
this
le plan,
compass on the
relatif, ça
relative
peut,
level
fluidifier pas mal de choses.
can help
Parce que
fluidify things a lot.
tout nous amène à cette fluidité.
Everything brings us to this fluidity. If you resist the current, life will keep on keep you on facing.
Voilà, quelqu'un qui il a tout le temps des clins d'œil. La vie lui dit tout le temps, lui
It's
envoie
like
des
life,
blocages
you know,
à tous les niveaux.
can send you lots of problems, you know, as long as you don't
Et ça va être exponentiel en fait.
see
Tant
it
qu'il-
and realize that,
en plus,
the
c'est quelqu'un
more
qui est sur qui veut réaliser le soi, ça va être encore plus intense.
if you are someone who's on the spiritual path, you're going to be shaken more and more if you don't realize all that is blocking the current, really. So
Quelque part, plus tu veux réaliser le soi,
the more you want to realize the self, in a way, the more you
c'est
suffer.
vrai.
It is kind of
Même
true.
l'intense désir de
Because this
réalisation,
intense
c'est souvent une
desire
souffrance.
for realization, it is sometimes a source of suffering.
Mais c'est bon signe.
But it's a good sign. So to listen to your
Il y a
heart
pas de
helps
question
you
de temps, mais en
to
tout cas, c'est
prevent you from losing your time, really. Well,
plus
you
harmonieux.
can't, you
Non,
know,
il y a
waste
pas de
time or there's no time, really. So it's more
Ouais, c'est
fluid,
plus fluide,
it's
c'est plus harmonieux. Ouais.
more harmonious. Absolutely.
Et quand je parle de la souffrance,
Doesn't mean we're not going to
Oui, bien
suffer.
sûr.
No, yeah. We can live
oui,
from the
ça
heart
peut-
and
ça
still
peut aussi
be
arriver.
facing something
Ce que je
quite
veux dire, c'est que mais
hurtful. Yes?
C'est pas une obligation, hein, tout le monde ne passe
We,
pas
we,
par la souffrance.
it's not something
c'est pas-
mandatory.
c'est pas
We
une
don't have to go through suffering.
Apparemment,
But
la
apparently,
majorité.
the majority of people go through that. But
C'est pas une obligation.
it's not
parce
mandatory
qu'en toute
thing.
logique, et ça c'est le Bouddha
Because
le dit
quite
texto, hein,
logically, the Buddha says it,
désirer ce que tu ne
to desire what
que
you
tu ne peux pas obtenir ou ce que tu
what you
ne-
can't obtain,
le désir de ce que tu n'as pas ou quelque chose comme ça. est
the
souffrance.
desire for something that you don't have is the base of suffering, is suffering.
Exactement.
Or that you
C'est ça.
believe you don't
Voilà.
have is
Dans le cas de la réalisation du soi, c'est
suffering,
vraiment
yes.
le désir
And that
de,
is
ouais,
that
de ce que tu ne crois pas
when it
avoir,
comes
de
to
ce que-
enlightenment, it's desire to want something that you
ça,
think you don't have brings suffering.
La simple croyance de ne
The
pas être
very
réalisé
simple
fait ce qui
belief
mène à la souffrance.
that you're not enlightened is the source of
C'est une
suffering.
croyance, en fait.
It is a belief, only a belief.
Parce que quand tu lâches tout,
When you
t'acceptes de
drop
tout perdre, tout d'abandonner,
everything, when
tu
you
vois, voilà,
you allow yourself to lose everything and to surrender,
ça a toujours été
it
là.
is, you realize that it's always been here. It is here.
Donc c'est bien une croyance. Hein.
So it is really a belief.
Quand tu dis tout perdre,
When you say
Tout
let go of everything, to lose everything, to... What do you mean by that? All the mechanisms, attachments, all the things that we own, belongings to cultures, or all that is connected to a character. In monasteries, monks usually have to say, do what you want. If it be your will, do what you want with me. So there's no more deciding, no more. It's no more believing that I decide for myself. It's abdicating, really. Yes. Yeah, let things happen. Whatever happens doesn't mean we don't act. Whatever happens. There's something very joyful in that. That is true freedom there. Yeah, that is freedom. It's not at all upsetting, really. No, not at all. Not upsetting at all. For Catholic, there's a bit of a duality with the creator and creature. Yeah, there was a hierarchy that was invented or added on, but at the same time, the Christ, when he talks, we talk about this Christical principle, which is every being. My Father and I are one. Can you see that? And he's actually addressing every being. And there's no separation there. We are forming only one. It is not necessarily perceived like this for theologists, but there are keys in those scriptures. So there's not really separation, but it is a little bit occulted. Confession might allow us to not be in wrong beliefs about ourselves. Mm-hmm. Confession goes through a priest, so it brings back a story to me right now about during the Jesus times, and there's a centurion coming to a priest. Who am I supposed to confess myself to, you or God? The priest say, well, God. And the centurion say, well, then, sir, please step aside. Everything is... We can find everything in those scriptures. There's union and unity is there into the scriptures of the Christ. We don't see it, but it's there. Also, confession can be a way to unload or unburden ourselves. All traditions, ancestral traditions, are righteous, are truthful. The way that we've been transmitting them and sharing them, the way we teach. Yeah, but Christians tend to say that it's their way, their path is the only right one. Well, that's the institution that is actually holding on to something there. Muslims might say, that this is the last religion revealed, so it has to be the truest one. And Jews will say, no, we are the chosen one. And Indians will tell you, you can only go through Krishna, Trying to synthesize. Padre Pio had a spiritual son whom he saved during a war. He was shot at, but so he had, numerous holes in the body, but still he survived, and he was canonized after that. When he saw Padre Pio asked, how was it? How was the light? Well, he explained a sort of an NDE, he's seen a lot of different faces, and he's seen the Christ, and then he's seen the light. So there's a sort of mental representation, imaging, but then there's no more, at some point there's no more identification to any story, any culture, any story, but what's the meaning behind that? All those, practices of confession or rosaries or masses or Eucharisties, it's the same everywhere. The three things that you're describing then, we find them in all the three traditions, all the big and traditions. Why all the stigmatas then? I don't really understand. What does it allow? What does it grant?
Ça participe pas à croire, à avoir foi.
It participates in people having faith, not believe, but have faith. But it is quite complex, all of that. When we see all those apparitions of Mary, one of them, happened in France to avoid a civil war. I think it was three little girls that saw Virgin Mary, but it has been identified, and they weren't religious. So what they describe, when they go through the Holy Sacrament, the apparition disappears, and what the priests have said about that is it dissolves in front of unity, before unity, and it is such a powerful symbol. They are witnessing and testifying about something that is very powerful. What is the meaning? There is a meaning. Same as pushing the rock. It's just to busy yourself, get yourself busy. It's just for people. People are practicing even more afterwards. It can participate to this impulse, for people to. There's no meaning. Don't try and find a meaning. Just let go of that. Solution is doesn't reside in the symbol, the image, the icon. What I see is that it deepens the heart in our culture. Yeah, in some cases it can help. Mary is a figure that is softer than Jesus in a way. So. Yeah, we do wonder. Those apparitions, there's a function. So there's, some entities from the astral that are coming to this manifested level to protect the world. Marthe Robin said that civil war will be avoided by 3 little girls seeing an apparition. Sometimes humans have to remember that there's not only what you can see, only the visible, because you can be stuck onto this visible level of things. So to make them understand and remember that there's more than to the visible than they think, you have to send them something visible, which is a bit of a contradiction. It's still dual, all of that. There's no children who've seen anything. It's just the same presence everywhere, and it's not for the children. It's only about consciousness. It's because it comes from children. We know that they are innocent, so it's easier to believe them and to understand the message. That Saint Francis of Assisi said, "Why have you been chosen?" Well, I said, because I'm a nobody, really. Reason why he chose me. He was partying all the time. He was really not into that kind of thing. Lots of people were. Right.
Mais tous ces trucs extraordinaires là, c'est
all
pareil,
those extraordinary events,
on est dans une époque où c'est en train
we are in an era where it is actually changing. There was a sentence that came to me
de la présence que
from presence that I wrote
au début, juste après la réalisation.
Right after the shift, I was often awakened during the night.
Dans le sommeil profond, dans l'état de sommeil profond, donc il n'y avait pas de mental, et je prenais un crayon et j'écrivais ce qui venait.
And I just, grabbed a pen and I just wrote what was coming up. And once I wrote,
les saints d'autrefois
saints from the past were extraordinaries so that everyone would believe. Saints from today will be very ordinary so that everyone can believe. For everyone to know that it is accessible to everyone, that it is there for everyone, that there's no elite. There was a sentence about Ramana. Awakening is very ordinary, and Ramana Maharshi is someone who's extraordinary. From the relative level, it appears to be extraordinary.
Comment? Le corps est mort.
And Ramana is dead now, and the body is dead, yeah. But people who are sharing now are people like you. And it allows me to see myself in you. It's easier. It's simple for me. When you see someone simple giving you a message that is simple, it makes it easier for me to believe it. I've met people who go to India 3 times a year, and my master is like, floating on above the ground. And when you see someone who says, "But this is so simple," yeah, I need flowers, I need a throne and levitation, and can't be enlightenment if there's not that. I know that someone was actually sharing, and he was asked questions, and he would actually writing answers, and the answers were read. And reason why I'm here today with you is that you're laughing all the time. You're very simple, and compared to someone who's kind of glowing and floating around, levitating, I don't really care for that. And this is the era we're in. It's simple, accessible, and it's okay for me to recognize that. There was this click that happens in me. If he does that, then it's possible for me too. You realize that it's possible. It's accessible. 20 years ago, those masters, there was such devotion. Well, Ramana. Well, he's dead now, so move on. I love Ramana. We can hear that. No worries. I'm not questioning. He was a great master, but today I keep saying Jesus came back, and he's on YouTube. People are waiting for Jesus, but Jesus is right here, right now, and it just doesn't have the form that we are expecting. But look at people here. Pretty much everyone will tell you in this room that they've seen you on YouTube. So Jesus is back. And he came back as 2. 2 for 1. 2 for the price of 1.
Ah, le blasphème là.
What a blasphemy.
Oui. Le péché capital. Ouais,
Capital sin.
Mais c'est... je pense que c'est aussi ça qui a contribué personnellement ici que cette réalisation ait lieu.
Here, for realization to happen, I've met masters the way you describe them.
J'ai aussi été proche
and I've also been very close to, for instance, Gerald.
J'ai vu
I saw him very often, and I thought it was very ordinary. Doesn't have to be extraordinary. But I've also seen people in the Himalayas and masters in the Himalayas being very ordinary. But most of the time we make a big deal out of it. I met someone who knew Mahandamayi when she wasn't famous, because now when people, when they read or see videos of Mahandamayi, they imagine things. So I know someone who actually met her before she was famous. Okay, this is just, women dressed in white. And she actually missed it. She's ordinary, she's normal. She doesn't speak a lot, she gives candies to people, it appeared to be, quite ordinary, mundane. And I know a sage in the Himalayas, you can't find more normal than you. There's no rules in the ashram. The only rule in the ashram is badminton at 3 p.m. Doesn't play anymore because it's a little bit old now. But he's just living quite simply. He laughs a lot and he watches cricket on the TV. So he has a very simple life and ordinary. And Ramana Maharshis or Nisargadatta Maharaj, we do have them, some of them too in France. We just idealize those people and it creates a separation right there. They keep telling it themselves, that they are like us, there's no differences, but that is false. Is it? I've heard that here. There still is difference. It's false that they appear to be different, or it's false that they say that there's no differences. Well, there are differences, I believe. Maybe I'm wrong, but I couldn't actually be in your place. If I was sitting where you are, it wouldn't make any sense. Do you want to test it? Do you want to try it? Well, I wouldn't be able to say anything and people would get bored very easily and quickly. But I'm not afraid to do that. No, it's just that it's a very famous story in India. Very famous. A sage that was very famous, who was enlightened, and one of his disciples was realized. So he was teaching in his place, and one day the master said, "Who do you think you are? Go down your pedestal and we put someone else." And the sage in question just went down and sat down and just listened to the satsang. Didn't change anything. And the person in front of them didn't say anything, but it was still a satsang. It was still presence. Doesn't change anything. It's always going to be presence that is contemplating presence. Yes, but when you are starting talking, not that I'm praising you or anything, but it feels like, wow, he's extraordinary. Just to let you know, I saw you the first time. I said, okay, he's a handsome man, but not that much. And I also thought maybe he's a very good actor, but I don't think so. Or there's a difference between him and I. I couldn't be able to say a tenth of what you're saying. So to me, it doesn't feel like ordinary people in front of me right now. Well, it's just an impression. Realization has also nothing to do with the very fact that you are talking a certain way. It could also say nothing. It is not about, has nothing to do with a way of formulating things. We met Unmani, someone who's very smooth and soft, and she feels very normal. And she said, like, I'm not different from you. I haven't done or been through experiences that you haven't been through yourself. But the way she was talking, I felt like, no, you're just simply extraordinary. And we are very different, even though I can't really explain or express it properly. She could have stayed silent. I'm very conscious of that. But when you actually start talking, immediately feels like you're extraordinary.
Eh bien, c'est le problème de la parole aussi, c'est qu'on peut
That's the problem with words. We can identify to words. I'm not saying you're doing so, but the truth is we can do whatever we want with speech and words. So we are given tools. So there's words, but what happens has to do with presence. What happens here doesn't really happen on the level of words only. Words are pointing towards, but the deepest communication and sharing doesn't happen on the level of words. There's a scientific study that's been pointing that there's only 7% of a message that goes through words. Is it the way of talking that makes you separated, that makes you believe that there's a difference? Not the way. It's the certainty in your voice. And you're saying things that are quite inaccessible to me. They appear inaccessible to you. It's not the same. They appear inaccessible. So it feels like you are... Can I say something? Put my ex-wife here. What she sees is two bozos. Two bozos talking about, crazy things. So the only thing that we see is ourselves. The truth is, we see from a referential. I've shown her a picture of Ramana, and she burst into laughing. So, look at him with his slip on, and I'm like subjugated by him, and I'm like in love and adoring him, and I show him to her, and she's like, what is this bozo, naked bozo? So depending on the kind of way we look at things, and the look we put on.
Oui, c'est sûr. C'est sûr.
Alors pour pouvoir compléter, parce que tu m'as posé la question, moi je comprends ça. J'ai aussi cet effet-là, tiens, pour le coup, je vois une photo de Ramana.
I have the same thing happening to me. I see a picture of Ramana. It talks to me. I can feel it.
Qui n'ont pas l'aura de Ramana, qui ont l'air normaux.
But also there are people that don't look like Ramana, like they look quite very normal and mundane, but the moment they start talking, it's like, wow, they've actually reached and touched things that appear to be very inaccessible to me. So I'm very impressed. Reason why I keep coming back.
Est-ce que t'aimes bien?
And do you like it? To be impressed? To find this, to try and find this inaccessibility. We can actually entertain ourselves into that. It can be a game from the little me. Well, sometimes I feel like, it reminds me of my childhood, when I was listening, to fairy tales. And I feel like you could be telling me the story of enlightenment, the story of marvel.
Non, c'est pas une question d'y pouvoir, mais c'est une question de le voir. Dès le moment où tu le vois, ça commence à s'effriter.
And as soon as, as soon as you start seeing that, realizing that, it's starting to dissolve.
Tu sais, ça c'est lié à ton histoire.
It is connected to your story. There's maybe there's something in you that.
Quelque chose en toi qui a un besoin de merveilleux.
That there's a part of you that needs marveling.
Mais c'est pas
and marvel,
dans
but
dans ce sens-là.
It is not marvel in that sense.
Encore une fois, c'est pas merveilleux dans le sens de.
It's not a marvel in a sense of.
Tu vois, quand tu m'as dit, c'est pas pour te jeter des fleurs.
When you said you're not, you said I'm not praising you or sending you praises. I don't see any flowers. I don't see praises. It is not connected to the existential level.
Pierre qui saurait bien faire des belles phrases, tu vois.
It is not connected to this idea of there's a Pierre that is able to say nice words. It is just characteristics of this character that are subsisting after enlightenment, but it has nothing to do with enlightenment in itself. And I'm absolutely certain that there are enlightened people talking about awakening and talking with quite slang words and familiar way of talking.
Même là-dessus, ça vous transforme d'ailleurs au passage. Il n'y a pas énormément de gens dans la vie qui...
There are not so many people in life that talk nicely, that construct sentences in a nice way. So it's surprising to see people talking properly. And so all of those teachers, all of them, know how to share.
Mais il y a aussi cette chose qui est, alors là pour le coup, qui me fascine pas, qui est juste surprenante, quoi. Mais l'élément essentiel, enfin je crois, c'est
But the essential element feels like you're saying that you've reached.
Tu diras comme tu voudras.
You're put into your own words.
Au moment où tu dis tout est un et
the moment you say all is one, and it feels like you believe it. I don't believe it. I live it, and actually, it's not that I'm living it as a separate person living it. It's not I am living it. It's I am life, and life is one. It is truth. It is the truth. It's not a belief. Scientifically speaking, it is proven that there is only, like quantum physics say, there is only one field of consciousness. All is in unity. But can you understand that it can be impressive? Well, to be impressed, one of the things that was quite unsettling after or was a bit weird, was to actually look at image of Ramana, and there wasn't this automatic bowing anymore. Because for 17 years, every time I saw the picture of a master, and there was this bowing automatic, and it stopped after the shift. It was like it's or put another way, I look at you and there's the same thing, because I recognize myself, there's the same thing happening. Impressive, right?
T'as pas fait de Satsang avec Yolande?
Non.
Parce qu'elle parle pas, c'est le silence.
Mais tu sais qu'un arbre, par exemple,
a tree, for instance, it's not talking, well, at least not with words. But there's a quality of presence in a tree. But I'm being serious. I'm not being poetic right there.
C'est des grands enseignants, les arbres.
Trees are great teachers. It's very potent. what can be lived with a tree. Right after the shift, it was very flagrant to me. When I was in a park, I felt like I was with masters all the time, surrounded by masters, and everything was talking to me. Nature was always had a message to give me, but it wasn't a message. It was kind of translated into words, but like sentences coming up, like phrases like people saying, "I don't live joy today," and things like, "Look at a flower. Can't you see the joy? Isn't there joy in a flower?" And a flower is really expressing joy all the time. And why are you talking about trees right now? Because it is a satsang. What I'm trying to say is, Ramana might be more impressive than a tree, but it is as much a master as Ramana. Well, you're pretty much proving my point there. When I say you are extraordinary beings, because if you're in front of a tree, you feel like you're in front of a master. For me, you appear as extraordinary. But good for you. And it's all right. I see what you mean, because it's a little bit hard for me to understand. For me to understand that you cannot go pass by a tree and just say, "Oh, that's a tree." I've lived 5 years in Paris, and I was on the path, and I didn't see the trees back then. And I see the trees more now when I wander in Paris, and I feel in good company now. I chose to come to see you guys and not went into a park. I didn't go to a park and to watch trees.
Eh bien, c'est une bonne... Toi qui t'ennuies un peu dans ta pratique de méditation.
Since you're quite bored with meditation, it's a very good practice. And look at a tree and ask yourself, what does the tree living? What does the tree live? What does a tree live? You'd be surprised by the answer. There's a movie about that. Secret Life of Trees, The Intelligence of Trees. Yeah, there's several films. I've talked endlessly about that with my students. Yeah, it's a great discovery. We're realizing that there's a consciousness in this tree, and the tree is conscious about his progeny, and he's going to choose to feed his progeny before the rest, and they recognize themselves. They have names, and don't know if you know about the Kogi Indians. They talk with trees. There's a story. I think they went to a weather laboratory in Toulouse. So scientists. So Kogis keep asking lots of questions. What's that for? What's that for? What's that for? This is for temperatures. This is for the rain. This is for. And all of a sudden they just leave the building and they go outside, so everyone follow them. They find a tree, put themselves in front of them, silence for a while. After a while, they open their eyes, and so everyone is waiting. So, sorry, what happened? What did you do? Well, we've talked to the tree, and they told us that this is not going to be the weather you actually foreseen. This is. And it obviously it happened exactly how they said. And the scientists were like, "How do you do that?" And Kyrgyz said, "Like, we just talk to the trees. Don't you talk to the trees?" And they couldn't really comprehend that we're not talking to trees. And they said, even though we're not on our sacred land, but even here, everything is connected and everything is communicating. So the trees can bring you some deep comprehensions.
ça se passe par le cœur, ça se passe pas
happens
dans le mental.
with the heart, through the heart, not in the mind.
Qui va te parler avec une voix d'arbre.
Don't think that it's the tree is going to start talking to your mind with a, tree voice. It really happens somewhere else.
C'est pas de l'ésotérisme. Enfin, je veux dire, c'est pas.
And it's not esoteric.
C'est vraiment de l'Advaita, ça.
It's really Advaita. There's really not two at all.
Et quand tu vas au fond des choses,
and when you go deep within things and behind all the forms,
qui est vécu là, c'est de la joie.
What is being lived is joy.
Un arbre vit vraiment
a tree
je veux dire,
experiences and lives through joy. A tree has perceptions, and behind those perceptions, there's also a deep joy.
Un oiseau aussi.
A bird too.
Peu de temps après la réalisation, j'étais en train de.
After the shift, I was eating a sandwich in the street, and
il y avait un oiseau.
There was a bird.
C'était pas spécialement pour le sandwich.
He wasn't really interested in the sandwich, and it was just he just landed next to me, and he looked at me in the eye, and it was like a darshan, like what looking at a master. I saw that evidently a bird doesn't experience doubt. There's something that is entirely there in the now with birds. There's not even 1% that is outside of now. There's no doubt in a bird. In the Quran, something like that is written. Animals pray constantly. If we interpret that with the mind, we imagine that, animals talking to God. But that's not that. They know themselves as being in communion all the time. Yet they don't know that they are not conscious of being consciousness. That's the difference.
Ils ne mettent pas de concepts ajoutés à ce qu'ils font, par exemple.
They don't add any concepts to whatever they're doing.
Un oiseau qui fait
a bird that is nesting. There's not a year where he's gonna.
Cette année, j'ai foiré mon nid. Je ferai mieux l'année prochaine.
I failed at my nest. It doesn't have any sort of column sheets, and saying, "Oh, this year was a failure for my nest." He doesn't then think in terms of my nest.
L'état de réalisation, c'est vraiment qui n'est pas un état d'ailleurs.
Realization is really this simplicity.
C'est un peu comme l'oiseau.
And the 2-month-old is pretty much like a bird.
Sauf que ni le bébé de
except
moi, ni l'oiseau sont
that a 2-month-old baby or a bird are not conscious of being consciousness, yet they are emerged into bliss and wholeness. What happens with the look? I've noticed that quite amazing things were happening when you look at animals straight in the eyes, or children and babies. So I've been wondering what's happening there. That can be a gateway. That can be a door to understandings. Lots of sages do teach through gaze or look, just through the gaze. I didn't know that, but the eyes are the only part of the body that doesn't change from the day we're born to the day we die, the physical death. Depends for who. Depends. It's funny that you should say that, because I've got a friend when she's been through experiences, and one of her eyes actually changed color.
D'ailleurs, c'est les amis que j'ai été revoir, que j'avais pas vu depuis une quinzaine d'années, là, à Dijon, là, il y a quelques jours. Et donc, elle a un œil. C'était pas le cas, elle avait les yeux de la même couleur.
She had same colored, eyes with the same color, but she's been through amazing experience, like very strong and potent experiences, and one of the eyes changed color. We keep the same expression throughout our life. We've got the same gaze, whether we are 3 months old and 80 years old. Well, I don't know, but that's what I've been told. It's the reflection of the soul. Yet the soul can change, so the soul and consciousness are not the same, right? No, they aren't. It's within consciousness. It's not outside of it, of course. And what is the purpose, the role of the soul?
C'est ce qui fait les connexions entre
That's what creates the connection between the most subtle with the densest, the most dense part of this manifestation.
Je réappuie sur la même question, pardon. Mais là, tu as dit tout à l'heure, juste peu de temps après avoir atteint la réalisation, j'ai mangé un sandwich.
Oui.
Donc ça veut dire qu'il y a bien eu une date, il y a bien eu un moment.
Oui.
You said that after the shift, you actually
Il y a une reconnaissance.
you ate a sandwich, so you kind of there is some sort of a date in time where you can say that the shift happened. Yes. So there is a notion of a moment where the shift happened. Depends. In my case, I would say that yes, there is, and well, for me, I wouldn't. I never felt any kind of shift. So you've always been that ever since I was a child. Yes, indeed. I even remember things when I was within the womb of my mom. I've always been very awake, always conscious.
Ça, c'est impressionnant.
All right. Okay. Well, that's something. Like I said, around 20, I didn't know how to formulate that. So, being 20, I said, okay, I'm going to go and tell her. I do remember, I remember this, this. As if I was actually seeing and perceiving it. And even my mom, I wouldn't say that she was surprised because she had quite a deep comprehension because she went through an awakening experience. But she did look at me with, quite wide eyes. And she said, well, that's quite funny because people I was confiding in back then, so sometimes it was father, but also friends. And those, I never told that to people, to anyone. But still, I was conscious of that. I'm being a child with my grandparents or in the street or everything. It's never left me.
On peut parler de conscience et je peux pas parler de basculement en fait.
So we can talk about consciousness, but I can't talk about shift. So you've never carried the belief that you're not realized? No. And what's funny is when I was a child, I told people, when I'll be grown up, I'll explain to people how things are. I can see myself telling that to adults, grown-ups, and telling me back, what are you talking about? So that was quite funny. So I'm kind of here right now, like quote unquote, as I saw myself back then, but I really can't talk about a shift. But you did go through a spiritual path, yes, but it just... So yes, I decided, okay, I'm going to go into meditation and do practices, but all of a sudden I just stopped. So I did that for 15 years, and I went through all the way up to the end, in a way, but I did know that I didn't have to do it. I just went through it. I just did it for around 15 years, quite intensively. To keep myself busy. Yeah. To pass the relative time. It was his rock, his own particular personal rock. It was also to be able to explain things to people. Yes, absolutely. He hasn't been just meditating. There was a lot of different approaches and practices. Same for me. We've tested pretty much everything so that we can talk about and answer questions. But just keep in mind that every practice there's endless numbers of practices. Everyone has a path, a personal path, like yes, it is still the same consciousness, but yeah.
En parallèle à tout ce cheminement de 15 ans, t'avais pas toutes les souffrances psychologiques que tout le monde se traîne en général.
In parallel with that path, you didn't have any kind of suffering, or they came, but there was some sort of the perspective that I was kind of watching from the background. I was completely conscious and aware that it was a game, and I went through them entirely, fully, knowing it was a game. So when my mom passed away, I was expressing a sadness, knowing that it was a game, and my friends were saying, you should go see a therapist. So I listened to them, and I went to see one, and she was pretty famous and very efficient in what she was doing. So we went through a session, and no, you're not depressed at all. That's all right. I don't even know what you're doing here, really. And I didn't know what to say, really. Well, I just listened to people around me, So it feels, it sounds a bit weird, but I've always had this step-back positioning. People kept on thinking around me that I was really not into, I wasn't taking care of problems of the world, or that I couldn't care less about the world. But no, it was quite hard for me to explain that it was happening within me. And after a while, it became simpler. It was a little bit hard for me to explain. But I did go through a lot of experiences, as pretty much everyone, through all those experiences absolutely fully, still knowing it was a game. So you feel, you do feel all the emotions perfectly. You can even cry, but you don't identify with. Absolutely. Let's talk about love then. How can we be in a partnership relationship? How does it work? Does the relationship change? Do we love the person the same way? Is there attachment? If I am all of that, then person is with me, but if it's not, if she's or he's not with me, it's not a big deal. There's no more exclusivity. As soon as there's realization, if you live with someone, with a partner, there's no more exclusivity. We love every being the same way, with the same intensity. It's not exclusive, but there's still a preference. No, it's not. No, it's not possible for realization to be there if there's still a preference, because consciousness. So why did consciousness created this idea of relationship? Or well, there are lots of different sorts of couples. One can be with one is realized, one couple where there's the two of them are realized. Anyway, imagine that in a couple, one is realized, not that the other one isn't, supposedly. If the one who's realized had to go, it wouldn't change a thing. But it could be a little bit unsettling for the one who's not realized, because there's still attachment. But it doesn't change a thing for the one who's realized, because there's nothing happening, there's no comprehension, no evolution, no sadness, no separation. It doesn't exist. But the things are just arising by themselves. It's just part of the game. It's just something that is appearing as it is, and just needs to be welcomed as it is. There's no meaning behind it. It's so if the enlightened one has a child, he's not going to be attached to his child than to his neighbor. I know it's a one. Yeah. This is a hard one. Of course. It would be compartmentalized if there was a preference for the child. So, to be detached from this, that, all of that is okay, but this, no, I'm not. That wouldn't work. That's not consciousness.
On est d'accord. Tant que, en tout cas, l'être qui a réalisé soi, lui, ne souffrira pas.
The one who's realized is not going to suffer from.
Qui est un parent proche ou autre. Oui, il peut y avoir souffrance, identification à ça, bien sûr.
If something happened to the child, yeah, for someone who's not realized in the family, it can be hard, of course. It is part of the experience and the game of things that we have, quote unquote, transcend, welcome, or accept, whatever you want to call it. I was talking about art, so we can still write a poem of love, a love poem to someone. Yes, but you'll know that you're talking to consciousness. Every time I listen to, music on the radio, I hear it, and I hear it's addressed to consciousness. All the lover songs, it is always consciousness. Even the one, like, I want your body, I want you to. That's all there is, consciousness. It's really a song and a chant to consciousness. And in relationships, isn't there some sort of affinities, or is it all the same? Do you feel like the people that you feel closer to you? Closer? No.
Mais c'est pas dans le sens plus proche.
Ouais, c'est pas une proximité, voilà.
It is not a proximity. It's not. So you don't care if.
Je sais pas si je te demande ce soir tu vas boire un verre plutôt avec telle personne qu'avec telle autre.
Alors ce soir,
if you.
On a eu le cas hier, exactement.
Exactement.
Yes, something like that happened yesterday. Everything can change all the time, spontaneously. Yesterday it happened. We were supposed to go in a restaurant, and someone called. A friend of mine called. I need to see you. It's quite urgent. So it wasn't planned, and I accepted. She was supposed to arrive at a certain hour. She was late. Happened the way it should. I didn't question it. So it was kind of an urgency for her, so it was all right. I did see her. And for tonight, it's the same?
Non, c'est exactement pareil. Tu sais, je reçois tout ce qu'on pourrait appeler
I see and I receive at home. I welcome all sorts of profiles. Even people that you would call possessed or everyone is welcome. I remember a discussion, I think it was a friend of mine or maybe my father. No, you can't love the others the same way you love people from your family. No, I can't hear that. That's not possible. And I don't know how to tell them, but it is as it is. It can't be any other way. I can't make it or do it any other way. It is my nature. But I do hear that through them, it is lived this way. But I can't have any preferences. When my mom was still, the body was still alive, it's not always easy for a mother. She was trying to, hug me, and I told her I don't really need it. But I said, but please do share it with people, spread it, because she was kind of a divine mother. Just please go and give it to others who need it more than I do, and share it and spread it. So for a mother, it was a bit hard, like as a mother, but she did understand, and reason why lots of people came to her. So.
C'est quelque chose qui est souvent revenu dans les dernières personnes qui sont venues me voir m'ont souvent dit.
The last people that came to me, that was kind of something that was coming up again and again. It is quite visceral. If I was to choose between realization and my child, I would choose my child. This question is not even a question. It's irrelevant, really.
Oui, tout le monde dit je choisirais.
Everyone says, I choose my child's life rather than enlightenment. But it's irrelevant, really. It's only the mind that is creating stories.
Oui, mais non, c'est pas comme ça.
Et donc, du coup, quand on est réalisé que quelqu'un arrive dans notre vie.
So, when someone who's enlightened shows up into our life, we haven't chosen it. No, it's consciousness that is acting on its own. So if we love this person, we don't love it more, love her or him more than anyone else. But still, if we are enlightened, we can still have children and have a relationship, but you can also stop all of a sudden. Okay. Yep, that's it. We could say that we are in love all the time. We are love permanently. This is our nature. But it's not romanticized love. Love, I repeat it, let me repeat that, is recognizing that there's no other. Other is just identifying to a form, but there's no other. There's just consciousness everywhere. And when you recognize it in you, you recognize it behind all forms. It's automatic. Cool. Yep. Doesn't mean that you say yes to everything. If someone is behaving, and I'm talking about behavior, is toxic, a nuisance to someone else, if you can do something for it, to help it, you might act. Love doesn't mean saying saying yes to everything we say. Innerly we say yes. I don't know how to explain that. We accept the way things are, as they are, but there's an impulse that will arise, and it will make you act a certain way if it needs to. We don't let all of things just, go by. Do you compare it to a love of a mother sometimes? Yes, but without the attachment that comes with it.
Oui, parce qu'une mère est capable
Yes, because a mom
sans condition.
Can love unconditionally. Any advice for someone who's about to leave the body?
Une personne de ton entourage?
Someone in your entourage? No, it's just if it arises in my life. The best thing you could do is to
être en présence tant que tu penses pas, tant que
to be present.
Donc tu n'as pas réalisé que tu es la présence, c'est d'être le plus
as long as you haven't realized that you haven't still realized that you are present, but to be as much as you can present, and from there let this presence act and to act from this presence, not from the mind, not from this idea of I wanted to help because this should be like this, or what it will emerge on its own. The right words will come up. It's going to be spontaneous. Often, not often, all the time, always. The most beautiful thing you can offer the world is presence. There's nothing better than that to offer. Presence and all its aspects, all that derive from it. Once I was with someone who, a friend's mother who was about to leave the body. She was really about to leave the body just a few moments after I saw her, and she saw that I wasn't unsettled at all. So she was, lying in her bed, and she saw that I was at peace with death. But her daughter and other people, they were trying to reassure her, but she was the one who was. They were trying to reassure themselves, really, and she did feel it in me. I didn't talk much, but she saw it, and I saw her right moments before, and she whispered in my ears, "Thank you for being here." We're still gonna live all our beliefs that are still with us when we leave the body. So if we believe in hell, then are we gonna live that into the astral? No, the hell in the astral is not that you believe in hell. Is how you believe in itself. For instance, if you're filled with fears and anxiety, it will manifest this way in the astral. Hell can be already there. For a lot of people, it is already there in this physical plan. If you're always anxious all the time, when you arrive in the astral, the emotional, this energetic body is still there, so it can keep on playing. It's a plan that is, moving forms all the time. You can create lots of things and a whole world, an ideal world. You can create, a whole universe for yourself within which you actually imprison yourself. We're not alone in the astral. But it is still relative, what we're talking about here. we're still caught in the loop or the cycle of reincarnation. It is still a more subtle movie, but it is still a movie. So when we are realized, we don't reincarnate. Again, we can. Like Krishna said, we reincarnate on our own accord. So we choose to, totally conscious and aware of what we're doing. So when we talk about ascended master, we choose to come down again to help. Maybe, not always. We can hear about things like bodhisattva, but not always. It can take many different forms. Might be your case? I'm fully conscious that I chose to come back. Yeah, it's never left me ever since I was a child. Bodhisattva is just a label, but I chose to come back. Yes, I'm absolutely conscious. It's never left me. I know that. Yeah. But you too, if we talk about this absolute standpoint, quote-unquote standpoint, but you've chosen. Consciousness chooses every incarnation. It's been chosen.
Dans la tradition tibétaine, ils disent de réaliser la claire lumière, parce qu'après c'est très fluctuant après la mort, l'esprit va très vite partout, quoi. Donc de pouvoir être stabilisé, de la reconnaître pour avoir une
Some teachings talk about recognizing the light. There are practices that needs to be done to stabilize this stability and get out and exit those incarnation. Why would you do that? To free himself? Doesn't he think that he's liberated? Well, as long as you're not realized, the movie keeps going. So the Dalai Lama wouldn't be enlightened? Maybe. All right. I don't know. Haven't read anything from Dalai Lama, so same here. What's for certain is to have a practice, to want to stabilize after death in a state where you can't reincarnate. Well, that points to a fear. That's for sure.
Oui, on dit ça en Inde aussi.
They talk about it's just
Effectivement. En fait, oui, c'est possible parce qu'en fait, tout ce à quoi s'accroche le petit moi, à un moment
everything
donné,
the little me holds on to is very shaken up. Reason why masters keep telling, think about death all the time. Because when you are like 10 seconds away from death, what's left for you to grab onto? No more becoming, no more family, no more status. Everything that makes a character, it's not there yet anymore. So it's a good occasion to exit the movie. But the sages do recommend to exit the movie before leaving the body.
Il y en a qui des fois qui disent j'attendrai le moment de la mort puis je répéterai
some people say I'll wait until death and I'll repeat Rama, Rama, Rama.
Une femme,
it's quite famous, a story about a woman.
Du parfum.
She was selling perfume.
Ouais, c'est ça. Elle était vendeuse de parfums et il y avait une femme qui était mendiante et qui
a woman, a beggar, wanted just once in her life, wanted perfume on her, and this seller, every time she kept telling her, you won't have even one drop. Death happens, and on her deathbed, this seller keep repeating that, Rama, 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 because they know there's an opportunity there to realize the self. So this old seller goes like this, not one drop, not a single drop, not a drop. Could you tell the story about this disciple that was taking this, that was on a plane and had a telegram from his master.
Ouais.
It was.
Mais c'est vrai que même c'est très indien ça.
It's
vraiment
very Indian. It's adoration, very typical adoration in an Indian way.
Tu l'as vu où ça en vidéo? Sur YouTube. Ok. Bah, en fait, c'était un sage qui était très connu.
A very famous sage in India had a disciple who had to grab a flight, South India to North India.
Et juste avant de rentrer dans l'avion,
and right before getting into the plane, he receives a telegram saying, good flight. And he was like, there's something there because my master never sends me anything like that. So he gets into the plane, and right in the middle of the flight, the plane starts shaking. One of the engine stops on one side, then the other one. And it is a true story, it's not invented. So the pilot says it's in India, so you can start praying because we do have a technical problem and there's a little chance that you make through it. So good mood in the whole plane. Everyone starts screaming and crying. And the disciple, very devoted disciple of this master, and he gets up and, don't worry, my master sent a telegram with me, so please sing with me, Hare Rama. And everyone starts, because this sage is very famous, so everyone starts singing. So there's half of the plane that is singing and crying, and it's also the plane is going down, so everyone is holding to the belt. And after a while, the pilot sees a field, plain field, and they actually land without any trouble. And that talks about confidence and trust. And so they ended up all being enlightened, maybe a few of them. But there's this trust. It's also trust that creates conditions for things to happen in a good way. Faith, yes. And unwavering faith. Yeah, absolute faith.
Ah bah, je pense que pour lui, ça faisait pas trop de différence.
Which master?
Le maître qui est très connu, c'est Swami Chidananda.
The famous one is Swami Chidananda. If you go to Rishikesh in India, you often see posters of him in front of shops. He's very, very famous. If you go to his place, his home, there's even all his nails, like fingernails and toenails, that you in little bowls. They've kept all his clothes. They've kept everything from him. That's so Indian. And so you can actually devote and adore toenails. The dust of lotus feet. That is the exact term.
Mais Swami Chidananda était vulnérable intérieurement.
Swami Chidananda was vulnerable. And he talked about that, like as a child, he was as vulnerable as a child. When he turned 88, he said that he still felt like an 8-year-old. He really kept as simple as a child for his whole life. Someone came to him once, and someone was kind of yelling at him in the middle of Rishikesh, insulting him. You give satsang, you keep talking about things. Disciples asked, do you need us to push him away to... Well, he's right. I keep, sharing in satsangs. I keep talking to people. He's right. Give him some flowers. He ended up crowned with, garlands of flowers.
Des histoires de maîtres en Inde, il y en a beaucoup.
Stories from masters, of masters. There's a lot of them in India.
Est-ce que vous avez une ou deux questions?
Do you have one or two questions left?
Oui.
Non, je voulais parler d'état de conscience modifié.
I wanted to talk about modified state of consciousness. And there's LSD, ayahuasca. I want just to know what you think about that when it comes to a spiritual path. Since we are seeking a state of consciousness that is not modified, is it interesting on this path to seek for those modified states? It's part of the experiences. It provokes experiences. It opens doors. It's not an end in itself, but you can experience it. So those are just experiences that don't last. Yes, but those are experiences we can experiment them in some cases, maybe to be accompanied with someone who knows what he's doing or she's doing. But it's not the end game in itself. And what about shamanism? We connect to different plants or spirits. Are those also just experiences? Yeah. We don't we connect ourselves to... We're still in the duality. Well, you say it yourself. You tell it yourself. We connect to... You can't connect to something. You are beingness. Realizing the self is not a connection to... Whatever the state of this connection, ADSL, it's not enough. You are the network.